Long ago, in a realm hidden beyond the veil of the cosmos, there existed a world unlike any other. Elyndria, a land woven from stardust and celestial energy, was home to beings of unimaginable power, guardians of balance, protectors of the unseen forces that shaped existence itself. They lived in harmony, their knowledge vast, their abilities beyond comprehension. But such greatness often attracts darkness. One fateful night, a cataclysm struck Elyndria, a force so terrible, so relentless, that even the mightiest of their kind could not withstand its wrath. The skies, once illuminated by the gentle glow of their twin moons, burned with chaos as the world crumbled. Cities of crystal and light were reduced to ruin, the echoes of an ancient civilization swallowed by oblivion. Yet, amid the destruction, a single desperate act of hope remained. In the heart of the dying world, a council of elders gathered in secret, surrounding a single, radiant cradle. Within it lay a child, an infant barely old enough to understand the fear in their eyes. She was the last hope of their kind, their final prayer to the universe. With the last of their power, they wove an incantation of exile, not to punish, but to protect. A swirling rift opened in the fabric of reality, and with a whispered blessing, they sent the child through, away from the devastation, away from the end. The portal closed. Elyndria fell silent, far across the cosmos, beneath an ordinary sky. The child's small vessel streaked like a falling star, descending into the quiet embrace of an unfamiliar world. The villagers who saw it that night mistook it for a passing comet, nothing more than a fleeting wonder in the heavens. But for one struggling couple, that night would change their lives forever. Heron and Lila, humble farmers on the outskirts of a small village, had spent years yearning for a child of their own. Life had not been kind to them, and though their hearts were full of love, their hands were often empty. When they stumbled upon the strange, glowing cradle deep in the woods, they were filled with both awe and fear. Inside, wrapped in silken fabric, unlike anything they had ever seen, was a baby girl. Her eyes shimmered, not with the dull, sleepy gaze of a newborn, but with something ancient, something knowing. They named her Zina, a name meaning gift of the stars in their native tongue. Though they never understood where she had come from, nor why the sky seemed to whisper when she laughed, they loved her as their own. She grew up chasing fireflies in the fields, learning to weave baskets with her mother, and listening to her father's stories by the fire. Yet, as the years passed, strange things began to happen around her. Flowers bloomed in her footsteps, even in the dead of winter. The wind seemed to carry her laughter farther than it should. And in the darkest moments, when she was afraid or alone, the very air around her would hum with an energy neither seen nor explained. The villagers whispered. Some called her blessed, others cursed, but Heron and Lila simply called her their daughter. Zina knew nothing of Elyndria, nothing of the great power buried deep within her. But fate is never so easily denied. One day, the past would come calling. One day, she would have to face the truth of who she was. And when that day arrived, the last daughter of a forgotten world would rise again. Zina believed she was just like any other child in her quiet village. At 12 years old, she woke at dawn to help her parents on the farm, ran through the meadows with her friends, and studied under the watchful eye of her teacher, Old Master Iver. But deep down, she sensed something was different. For as long as she could remember, she had never been sick, not even with a simple cold. She never scraped her knees, never bruised her skin, and never once felt the sting of pain. When she first noticed this, she thought she was simply lucky. But luck couldn't explain what happened the day she fell from the cliffs. It had been an ordinary afternoon, filled with laughter and games. She and her friends had been playing near the rocky ledge outside the village, daring one another to get as close as possible. Zina had never been one to back down from a challenge. But the moment her foot slipped, she realized too late that she had gone too far. She plummeted down the jagged cliffside, her friends' screams echoing in her ears. She should have died. Instead, she landed at the bottom, unscathed. The pain never came. No broken bones, no cuts, no bruises, just the stunned silence of her friends staring at her from above. That was the moment she knew something was wrong. But it wasn't just the fall. There was the fire, too. One night, a terrible blaze tore through her home. The villagers gathered with buckets of water, desperately trying to put out the inferno. Her parents cried out for her, believing she was lost inside. But when the flames finally died down, she stepped out from the wreckage, completely unharmed. Her clothes were untouched, her skin as cool as ever. The whisper spread like wildfire. At first, Zina tried to hide it. She forced herself to pretend she felt pain, to act afraid when she fell. But the village wasn't fooled for long. People started treating her differently. Some children feared her, whispering about dark magic and curses. Others idolized her, calling her invincible, daring her to do reckless things, like stand in the middle of a stampede or hold her hand over an open flame. Some simply used her. A group of boys began placing bets on what she could survive. They pushed her too hard, too far, but she never complained. How could she? She wanted to fit in. She wanted to be normal. But no matter how hard she tried, she was always different. Then, something worse happened. It started as an ordinary morning. Zina sat in class, staring at the equations on the board, barely paying attention. The air was thick with the usual whispers about her, the stolen glances, the sideways stares. But she had learned to ignore them. Then, a scream shattered the silence. A group of older boys had cornered a younger child outside the school. They were taunting him, shoving him against the wall, demanding he hand over his lunch. The boy, small and frightened, had tears in his eyes. Zina clenched her fists. She had seen cruelty before, but something inside her stirred, something deeper than anger, something older than her own understanding. "Leave him alone," she said, stepping forward. The leader of the group, a tall boy named Oric, sneered. "Or what? You'll survive another fall." His friends laughed, but Zina didn't flinch. "Last warning," she said, her voice steady. Oric lunged at her. He was stronger, bigger, but as soon as his hand grabbed her shoulder, something happened. A shock wave burst from her body. The air around her shimmered, bending like heat on a summer road. Oric was thrown back, crashing into the schoolyard fence with a force no human should have possessed. The ground beneath Zina cracked. Silence. Everyone stared. Fear filled their eyes. Even Oric, groaning as he tried to stand, looked at her as if she were a monster. Zina looked at her hands. They were glowing, faint but undeniable. She had no idea what she had just done. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't normal. She never had been. And now there was no hiding it. The night the sky turned red, the world as Zina knew it ended. The village slept under a moonless sky, unaware of the doom marching toward them. Then, the first horn sounded, a deep, haunting note that sent shivers through the air. Moments later, fire rained down. Arrows streaked through the sky like falling stars, igniting rooftops, tearing through homes. The screams began. A massive army swept through the village, soldiers clad in black armor, their banners bearing the sigil of a crowned wolf. At the front of it all, on a horse as dark as the night, rode King Razi, the warlord who had conquered a dozen kingdoms, whose thirst for power knew no limits. He was a man who feared nothing, for he believed all things could be broken or bent to his will. And he had come for Zina, the girl who cannot die. His voice echoed through the burning village. "Surrender her, and I will spare the rest." Zina stood frozen in her home, her mother clutching her hand, her father gripping a rusted sword he had no chance of wielding against the invaders. "This is my fault," Zina whispered. Her parents' eyes were full of love, but also of fear. Not for themselves, for her. She had two choices: run and hide, living in fear forever, or stand and fight. She looked out at the village, the place that had raised her, the people who had once whispered behind her back, but who had also fed her, laughed with her, given her a home. She couldn't leave them. She wouldn't leave them. With fire reflecting in her silver eyes, she stepped forward. "I'm here," she called, "and I am not afraid." Razi's soldiers moved in quickly, thinking she would be easy to capture. But the moment they laid hands on her, a burst of energy surged from her body, sending them flying back. The air itself trembled around her. The warlord's smirk faltered. "Interesting," he murmured. Zina fought with everything she had, wielding nothing but instinct. Arrows shattered against her skin. Blades found no purchase. She struck back, sending men crashing into walls with a single movement. But for every soldier she took down, 10 more came. She was powerful, but she was still a child. Then she heard it, her mother's scream. She turned just in time to see Razi holding a sword to her father's throat. Zina's heart pounded. She could fight forever, but she couldn't protect everyone at once. "You are strong," Razi said, his voice calm, dangerous. "But strength alone is nothing without control, without knowledge." His soldiers grabbed her arms, and though she flung them off, more came. Her father struggled, but the blade against his neck stilled him. "Come willingly," Razi said, "and they live." Zina clenched her fists. She could feel the energy inside her building, raging like a storm. She could destroy them all. She knew it, but she didn't know how. Then, out of nowhere, an explosion erupted near the village gate. A hidden stockpile of oil had been set ablaze. In the chaos, an elderly man appeared by her side. The village elder, Master Iver. "Go," he whispered urgently. "There is a temple beyond the mountains. It holds your truth." Zina hesitated, looking at her parents. "Find your destiny," her father said, his voice full of pride. "Then come back and take this monster down." With a final, painful look, Zina fled. She ran, her heart breaking with every step. She swore she would return, but first she had to understand who, or what, she truly was. The mountains were vast, the road treacherous. Razi's soldiers pursued her relentlessly, but she was faster, stronger. She survived on instinct, moving like a ghost through the wilderness. But she knew she couldn't win alone. She needed allies. Her first encounter was with a rogue fighter known only as Kale. A former soldier, Kale had abandoned Razi's army long ago, sickened by the warlord's cruelty. He was a hardened warrior, skilled in battle, but he saw immediately that Zina relied too much on raw power. "Strength without strategy is like a blade without an edge," he told her. Under his guidance, she learned discipline, how to fight with her mind as much as her body. He taught her to read her enemy, to anticipate, to strike with purpose rather than fury. Next, she met Leora, a wandering historian who had spent her life studying ancient texts and forgotten legends. It was Leora who gave Zina the truth. She was not human. She was the last of Elyndria, a race of celestial beings who had once wielded unimaginable power. Long ago, their people had been wiped out in a great catastrophe, one that Razi's ancestors had helped cause. He wasn't just after her because of her immortality. He wanted something more, something buried in the ruins of her lost world, and the temple beyond the mountains held the key. Along the way, Zina also met Finn, a young boy orphaned by Razi's wars. Unlike her, he could be hurt. He could bleed. He could die. But despite that, he fought, not because he was invincible, but because he had something worth fighting for. You think being strong means never feeling pain? He asked her one night. Real strength is fighting even when you know you can lose. Finn reminded her of something she had forgotten, why she was fighting. The temple was still far away. Razi's forces were closing in. The war was only beginning. But Zina was no longer running. She was ready. She would uncover her past. She would master her power. And then she would return, not just to defeat Razi, but to reclaim everything he had taken. As Zina trained, traveled, and fought, she grew stronger, but strength came at a price. Though her body remained unbreakable, her heart was not. She watched people she cared about suffer, powerless to stop their pain. She could not shield Finn from hunger or Leora from sorrow. She could not erase the scars Kale carried from battles long lost. No matter how powerful she became, she could not change the past or control the future. For the first time, she questioned herself. What was the point of being unbreakable if she could still feel so much pain? Her answer came when she faced her greatest test. King Razi had waited patiently, watching, learning. He knew brute force alone could not defeat Zina, but he had uncovered something far more dangerous, a weapon forged from the same celestial energy that had created Elyndria itself. It was the only thing that could truly hurt her, and he had captured her parents. Zina had always fought without fear, knowing nothing could harm her. But now, for the first time, she was vulnerable, not because she feared pain, but because she feared losing the people she loved. She could surrender, or she could fight. And this time, she did not fight because she was unbreakable. She fought because she was willing to break for the ones she loved. The battle was unlike any before. Razi's weapon cut through her, and for the first time in her life, she bled. The pain was real, but so was her will. She did not falter. She did not yield, because now she understood. True strength was not about never falling. It was about rising every time you did. With the wisdom of her people, the courage of her friends, and the fire in her heart, Zina overcame Razi, shattering both his weapon and his reign of terror. Her village was free, but her journey was far from over. Zina was now a legend. Many wanted her to rule, to lead, to become a queen. But she chose a different path. She became a guardian. She wandered the world, protecting the innocent, seeking lost knowledge of her people, and helping those who could not help themselves. She no longer fought because she was invincible. She fought because she chose to. And that choice made her stronger than anyone. Moral lessons for kids and teenagers: 1. True strength comes from within. Being strong isn't about never getting hurt. It's about standing up even when you do. 2. Courage means fighting for others. Zina wasn't a hero because she was invincible. She was a hero because she used her strength to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. 3. Vulnerability is not weakness. Even the strongest people feel pain, fear, and sadness. It's okay to struggle. What matters is what you do next. 4. Power is a responsibility. Just because you have strength doesn't mean you should use it selfishly. The best leaders, like Zina, use their power to help others. 5. Family is more than blood. Zina lost her birth family, but found love and belonging in her village and friends. Sometimes the people who stand by us through our struggles become our true family. 6. Every fall is a chance to rise. Life will challenge you. You will fail. You will face hardships. But your strength is defined not by avoiding failure, but by how you rise after it.